Today's topic is modal verbs. You're already familiar from the verb wollen. So as you'll remember, modal verbs are verbs that can be used along with other verbs. The term modal verbs refers to 6 German verbs. Wollen, which means to want, müssen, which means to have to or must, können, which means to be able to or can, sollen, for supposed to or should, dürfen, which means to be allowed to or may, and mögen, which means to like. As you'll recall, these 6 verbs do not follow the normal rules of German verb conjugation. It's not as simple as chopping off the en ending and then adding the usual conjugation endings. So the bad news is that they're irregular compared with normal German verbs. The good news is that they follow the same pattern of conjugation as each other. Think back to the character of Two-Face from the Batman movies. One side is completely normal, and if you only saw that one side, you would assume that the verb was a completely normal verb. The other side is completely strange, so if you only saw that side of the verb, you'd think the verb was really messed up. What makes modal verbs special is that, like Two-Face, they have one weird side and one normal side. Specifically, it's the singular side of modal verbs, the forms that go with ich, du, and er, sie, es, that's strange. The vowel in the stem changes for all of them except for sollen, and the conjugation pattern is different from other verbs you've seen. The plural side, on the other hand, is completely normal, no vowel change, and the same old endings as usual. Let's look specifically at the verb müssen, which means to have to or must. The singular side has a vowel change, though it might not look like it at first. What happens is that the singular side loses its umlaut. Instead of ich muss, you say ich muss. The du form is musst, and the er, sie, es form is muss, just like the ich form. On the plural side, the umlaut from the infinitive verb stays. Wir müssen, ihr müsst, sie und sie müssen. Notice that, just like with wollen, the singular side is the one that has the vowel change. And, because of the nothing st nothing conjugation pattern, the ich form and the er, sie, es form will be identical. As a refresher, here are the singular forms of the other modal verbs. Wollen would become ich will, du willst, er will. Können becomes ich kann, du kannst, er kann. Sollen turns into ich soll, du sollst, er soll, which is strange for a modal verb because there's no stem change there. Dürfen becomes ich darf, du darfst, er darf. And mögen becomes ich mag, du magst, er mag. Now let's review how to use modal verbs in sentences. The conjugated verb will go in the usual position for verbs, second in statements, and first in yes or no questions. The other verb will revert to its infinitive form and go to the end of the clause. Here are some examples of this. Ich will ins Kino gehen. Ich muss Hausaufgaben machen. Britta kann gut tanzen. And meine Katze muss das Geschirr spülen. Now, in these examples, notice that the conjugated modal verb is in the second position of the statements, and the infinitive verb is at the end of the clause. This can be very tricky for English speakers, who are accustomed to putting that second verb right after the modal verb. We would say, I have to do my homework, not I have my homework to do. So be very attentive to word order when using modal verbs. Let's review the essentials. Modal verbs like müssen, können, and wollen, have a vowel change in their singular forms and follow a nothing st nothing conjugation pattern. Plural forms of these verbs, on the other hand, are completely normal. Finally, when you use a modal verb with another verb, that other verb will be in its infinitive form and will appear at the end of its clause.